Confederates, of which we got a small proportion, and they were sat in the woods until the cannons had finished their firing. No one's exactly sure how many cannon the Confederates had, but it's at least 150. Now you can see how much smoke just these 3 cannons have produced. We've had no musket fire at all, but you can see. So imagine that's at least 150 times more than you're seeing now. In a few rounds, especially on a day like today, all you would see is probably me. And the other side of that roadway where the vehicles have been running around, you probably wouldn't be able to see very much at all. So having this fire on the small cannon there, so they'll sort that out.
Ready, and somersault.
And the big one, if I remember, is Harriet. Because people in the artillery like to name their guns, and it was usually someone associated with the battery, the cannon commander. So they're sorting out the little one. And so, like every army, it's hurry up and wait, hurry up and wait. Because until one bit's finished, you can't do the next bit. So, now the Confederates are beginning their long march, 3/4 of a mile uphill with no cover. At about 3/4 of the way up the hill, they have to cross a road which is protected by wooden fencing that they have to clamber over. And they are in full view of the Union Army all the way through their charge. It was called a charge, but it was actually people walking at a very steady rate, one foot in front of the other, waiting and waiting. So you've got a representation of the 3 divisions down the end. And you can hear the Confederates there cheering on the various states that were represented in the 3 divisions. The commanders holding their swords up to guide their men forward. And that's the end of the Confederate bombardment. Now it's all down to these 12,500 men. The Union have now started to open fire. They're firing, hoping to get some people. They may or may not. Because remember, they would actually have been shooting downhill, which is a bit more difficult than shooting on the level, like we are at the moment. Because you're having to point your musket so you're facing down. Because of the kick on the musket, that makes it a bit of a control when you're not doing it on the level. As I say, the Union are just taking some shots, partly to get their own back on any Confederate shells that have killed or injured their comrades. And the other thing is they're trying to get the range so that as the Confederates come forward, they can get their first shot to hit a target. I see one Confederate's gone down. The cannon stay where it is at the moment. They may or may not bring it forward. And the Confederates are putting up some fire by rank by the looks of it. What there is the two men closest to be up one behind the other. They fire, then the next two. So you see a ripple of fire going all the way down the line. So then usually what happens is every man fires for himself until the order is called to cease fire. So we have got a couple of Confederates down already, and that did happen. A number of them were killed or wounded as they set off. And the Confederates are coming up again. They've not brought the cannon with them, so this is all down to the infantrymen. The whole of General Lee's tactics are getting burnt are resting on these 12,500 men from the southern states. If they're victorious, the way to Washington DC is open. If they're defeated, the South has almost certainly lost the war. So everything hinges on this part of one battlefield. The buglers sending out the signals to tell each group what they're supposed to do. Ceasefire, firing by rank, firing by file. Each one had a bugle call, and the soldiers would learn what the bugle calls were and knew what they had to do. Because as you could hear, just in this amount of fire, you imagine thousands and thousands and thousands of more rifles and cannon going off. Unfortunately, the Confederate forces seem to be taking some very, very big hits. They're not even halfway to their target yet. And these people would have been dead, dying or wounded. And The field hospitals were set up at the beginning of the battle and after the battle. The last field hospital ended, closed down on the 20th of November 1863, so 4 or 5 months after the battle ended. Now, those of you down the far end, where the Confederates have come from, you'll see 4 gentlemen. 4 gentlemen. They are the Provost Guard, and the senior man is the Provost Marshal. And if anyone tried to leave the field, they would shoot them. No question. No other. If you left the field without a written order, they would shoot you. And the same thing would happen on the Union side. So you can see already they're about halfway to their goal, which is the top of the hill, and they've probably lost the best part of half their troops. The call of Fredericksburg was because the Union lost the battle at Fredericksburg, and they never quite forgave the Confederacy for inflicting that on them. Now, the Confederate cannon are trying to give some support because they can see their men are really suffering, so they want to help in any way they can, but given that their original shells didn't do the job, and they haven't realised what went wrong, they're probably not going to do an awful lot of good, but it will at least give the Confederates some comfort that they haven't been forgotten. And if you'll forgive me, I'll just take a quick sip of water. Now there is a superstitious rumour my canteen is full of medicinal brandy, but I can assure you that it's full of Adam's ale. Oh, the commander's gone down. This is where they win or lose. You can see they've been flanked by the lower people, so they've come in on the side. They're going to be charged for the other people, the other troops. And unfortunately, that's how the battle ended. There was no chivalry, it was fist, boom, bayonets, rifle butts, and anything that came to hand. The artillery would have used the implements they used for keeping the cannon clean and firing, so rammers and wormers. And at the end of it, more than half the Confederate soldiers who started the battle lay dead, dying and wounded on what became known as Pickett's charge. Pickett himself, his division, lost 2/3 of the men he took from the woods up the slope. And where you see the Confederates lying on the line, that was known as the high water mark of the Confederacy. The Confederates never got any further north than the angle on the battlefield at Gettysburg on the third day, the 3rd of July, 1863. Now, I'm going to take you to November 1863, and on a cold, chilly day, Abraham Lincoln came to the cemetery that had been created on the battlefield to consecrate it and to honour the men that had fallen. Someone had spoken to him, had spoken before him for 2 hours, and I don't think there's anyone anywhere who can tell you what that man said. However, the 207 words Abraham Lincoln said on those days echoes down through history. I give you President Abraham Lincoln.
Thank you, Mr. Everett. Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now, we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place to those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this land. The brave men, both living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it far above our power to add or detract. The world will little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they have done here. It is us, the living, rather, to be dedicated to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that these honoured dead that from these honoured dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave their last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Lincoln. And now the bugler will sound the last post.